Nixon. How do you deal with Nixon? Uh, Nixon's an interesting character, and he comes up a few times during this era of history, even in chapters he's not supposed to be in. He was in Kennedy's chapter very briefly, trying to steal Kennedy's health records for political purposes. So this kind of whole Watergate thing we really hear about. It's not like we didn't know this dude was doing stuff like this well before then. They don't call him Tricky Dick for nothing. He pops up in Lyndon Johnson's chapter. He pops up after during the presidency of Gerald Ford, where he talk about his pardon, and we'll talk about that in Gerald Ford's video. So this is a guy who kind of casts a long shadow, and it's very difficult in a case where, especially as you get more to the modern era, people have this is in living memory. People have strong emotions and opinions about this. If we were to talk about kind of the negative feelings that people had about Millard Fillmore, for instance, no one gives two fucks about Millard Fillmore anymore for many, many reasons, but the emotion of it's gone. There's no one alive today who was alive during that era who would have those kind of emotional reactions to his presidency. But Nixon's a different character entirely. So what we do here is really take that opportunity to take a look more of at a modern take, kind of a modern advertising and marketing take, which is more of a data-centric sort of way to look. So in the chapter, I look at multiple ways to look at the data surrounding Richard Nixon's presidency and what happened. What do the numbers say happened? And there are lots of ways we can do that. We look at nuclear proliferation. We look at unemployment. We look at education. We look at all kinds of different factors. And I want to share an excerpt on just one of them, and that's housing prices, where I take a look at that long-term trend and, okay, Nixon's term in office, and what does that really look like? So we're going to, let's take a look at one of these and read a quick excerpt. And let's see what the data tells us about housing prices during the Nixon presidency. They don't call it the American dream for nothing. The median price of a home remains a key measure of how confident Americans feel about their own lives and communities, and by extension, the mood they're in as they go into the polls on Election Day. Housing prices certainly aren't determined by or controlled by any presidential administration, but the government does exert direct and indirect influences on prices and affordability. Economic growth tends to increase housing prices, but lower interest rates, guided by the quasi-governmental Federal Reserve, can make housing more affordable. During Nixon's presidency, housing prices did increase, but only by about 3.5%. Adjusted for today's dollars, that difference of $161,000 to $167,000. That likely had some impact on the overall perception of Nixon's term, and without going into regional data, it would be hard to know if those fluctuations had broader impact on public perception. However, I suspect the change in housing prices did not have much of an impact, at least at the national level. Home price stability is a good indication of stable communities, at least in most places. However, sharply increasing home prices in the late 1970s, late 1980s, and especially the mid-2000s can have mixed impacts. They can give existing homeowners more purchasing power, especially when combined with home equity loans. However, they can present barriers to new home attainment for those looking to rise into the middle class. Home ownership also is a proxy for income and resource inequality more generally, a trend that has been increasing since the late 1970s that began to bubble up during Nixon's term in office. So, did Nixon have an impact on housing prices? Not much, no. You'll notice that when you take a look at the raw data and kind of the background of Nixon during this time, you discover kind of how separate those things really can be. In some cases, Nixon, you could make an argument for Nixon having an influence. In most cases, though, no. And it gives us a sense for just how impactful the president really is. We talk about that a few times, during Marketer in Chief. We talk about the impact of leadership, How important is a Tim Cook to Apple? How important is a Jeff Bezos to Amazon? How important is an Oprah Winfrey to Oprah's corporation? And the answer is yeah, but maybe not as much as you think. And it's an interesting way to really take a look at the objective versus the subjective way to look at that. So, again, an interesting chapter, maybe a less emotional way to handle Richard Nixon than we could have otherwise. I'll save that for Gerald Ford's chapter. So, that's it. July 4th, 2021, Marketer in Chief is available anywhere books are sold, but you can pre order your copy right now.